The University of Florida recently announced that they have hired the company tasked with coming up with renovation options for Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, better known as the Swamp. The press release said the goal is to preserve the energy and history of the stadium while upgrading the concourses, entry gates, seating, concession areas, and restrooms, and enhancements to the video boards and sound systems. Okay, so first and foremost, that leaves the field as the only thing untouched when you list all of those things: the concourses, the entry gates, the seating, the concessions, restrooms, video boards, sound systems. Okay, so they want to completely overhaul the Swamp. And in the tweet they sent out, they did mention that they wanted to make sure that they maintain capacity, whatever, that means. This is my issue. There was a lot of backlash on social media towards the University of Florida when they released this. And I got a lot of really interesting comments, pretty strongly worded on both sides of, the argument here to renovate or not to renovate. I felt like the timing of the press release was incredibly tone deaf. The University of Florida and their football program right now needs to right the ship, right? We, at that moment, didn't know who our DB's coach or our D-line coach was going to be. We now, of course, know that Will Harris will be our DB's coach, but we didn't at that time. We were losing kids left and right into the transfer portal, and we hadn't yet announced a single addition to this class past who we already knew was going to be in it so far. All of those things made fans incredibly angry when this came out. And I don't think it's because everybody's opposed to all the things that are being looked at here for the renovations. I think it's because people feel like you're so focused on facilities, but you're not focused on the product on the field. We only care about the product on the field. The facility that we watch it in is secondary. So I think that it was just, I'm really honestly hoping there was an intern that hit send that wasn't supposed to, because it felt very tone deaf for the moment. That doesn't mean that I don't believe Ben Hill Griffin Stadium needs some upgrades. First and foremost, it is not ADA compliant anymore in several different areas of the stadium. And I think it is important that all of our handicapped fans have the exact same accessibility as all of the rest of us. So that is something that should be priority number one, right? Of course, the bathrooms could be upgraded. They are, old at this point. They could use a facelift. Do we need granite countertops and, instant sinks? Probably not. We're there to watch a football game. But could they be freshly painted, fresh toilets, new and clean? Absolutely. And I don't think there's anybody that would be opposed to that at all. Does the concession stands need to be upgraded? I mean, look, you added beer to the stadium, so I'm perfectly happy. But if there's people that feel like you need better food options, not overly opposed to that as well. But what I am opposed to is the idea that we need more luxury boxes and less general admission tickets. If you add new suites, you are probably removing regular seats, right? I don't know how the stadium gets expanded. The piece of land that is on is very small. It butts up to buildings that are historical, so they have to be preserved. So there's only so many places that you can go. So if we're looking to add suites, which of course the press release did not mention, but we know is something the University of Florida is currently looking at, where do those seats come from? And I understand that the people that pay for the luxury suites pump lots of money into the university, and money is important. I understand that. But I also think it's really, really important to allow areas where young families can take their kids. Do you think boosters are born as 60-year-old men with money? They aren't. They're 7-year-old boys who go to their first Gator game with their parents and fall in love with the atmosphere that the Swamp provides, who catch a wristband from a player and keep it for the next 30 years, who learn all of the chants and cheers and know why all the rest of us feel so strongly about the orange and blue. Those kids are born in the general admission sections of the Swamp, taken there by parents who maybe saved up all year long to be able to take their kid to a football game. It is the lifeblood of any program. Those little kids that fall in love with football and the Florida Gators. I think it is incredibly short-sighted to even consider limiting the number of those kids that would get in the stadium, pricing their parents out. It's a long-term program destroyer. Also, the Swamp is one of the most intense and incredible environments in all of college football. That stadium sold out almost every game this season, and the product on the field wasn't good. How about improve the product on the field and see what happens? Florida doesn't need their stadium to be smaller. They fill it every single week. It's not a concern. Something that does concern me, though, is they mentioned in that release that it was potentially going to have a $400 million price tag. That's not the number that the UAA has thrown out to boosters or in other interviews. They've mentioned it was going to cost close to $1 billion potentially when they're done. That's a lot more than the $400,000 that's being mentioned. And look, the University of Florida has the money. That's not the point. But could that money be used in better places? Could some of it go into NIL so that Florida can start winning on the field? And look, the very most successful programs, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Clemsons, they figure out a way to have a balance, right? They invest in facilities, they improve stadium experiences, but they also figure out a way to support NIL and their players, and they field championship teams. Florida has yet to figure out the right combination here, the right balance there, but I don't know that this is it, right? I think that some of this stuff is necessary. We know that there are also cracks in the foundation of the stadium. That's something that absolutely has to be addressed for the long-term health of the stadium. You want to put some giant screens up so that we can have a better viewing experience? Fine. Throw up a giant scoreboard and Videotron. I'm all for that. But don't change what makes the Swamp the Swamp. I also kind of have an issue with who would be making these decisions. Scott Strickland's seat at the University of Florida is incredibly hot. I personally believe that Scott Strickland's tenure is tied to Billy Napier's tenure. If Billy Napier doesn't survive, it is mutually assured destruction for Scott Strickland. So are we really going to let someone who may not be at the University of Florida in 2 years make a decision that's going to affect the football program from here on out? That's going to affect the fan experience from here on out? I sure hope not. I think this really needs to go back to the people that have a vested interest for their whole life in the University of Florida, will be a Gator for life, not a mercenary. And you know what? Maybe Scott Strickland will be here for a very long time. Maybe Billy Napier is going to win next season and things are going to turn around. The ship is going to get righted. And I hope that that is what happens. But I still think that the decisions need to come from people with more than a vested interest in the University of Florida, people that are Gators. I also want to share with you guys a cautionary tale. I have a good family member who is a Kentucky booster, and he talks all the time about the renovations that happened at Rump Arena and how he believes it ruined the Kentucky basketball experience. It made the stadium smaller. There are less tickets available. He said that more people go to away games because they can afford the tickets than go on campus. And you know who was a part of the renovation project for Rump Arena? Scott Strickland. He was an associate AD under Mitch Barnhart when those changes were made. Kentucky doesn't like those changes. They feel like it hurt their basketball environment, their experience that happens there. So, cautionary tale, maybe Scott Strickland's way isn't always the right way. And I get it. The bottom line is always going to be money. But the University of Florida has money. The University of Florida's athletic department is one of the most successful in the entire country. There's got to be a way that we can upgrade the stadium without changing what it means for the football program and for the fan experience. I personally don't believe fans want to cushy seat and, a beer carried to them on a silver platter when they're in a stadium. I think they want to be shoulder to shoulder with 90,000 of their closest friends screaming for the football team that they love. I don't think they care that much about a padded seat. I mean, I don't. I don't think that that makes or breaks it. I think the on the field product makes so much more of a difference as to whether or not people are sitting in the stands than anything else you can add to the stands. When I was in college, I had the privilege of sitting 2 rows behind Shelly Meyer during a Florida Georgia game. And I can remember people yelling at her to sit down because they wanted to enjoy the game. And you know what she did? She turned around, she looked at those fans, and she said, "If you want to sit down, you got a couch at home." And that stuck with me because that's exactly true. The people that want the real game experience are currently getting it. If you want to sit on a couch, do it at home. You don't even need to drive to Gainesville. But let's not destroy what makes the swamp the swamp. And honestly, guys, at the end of the day, there just isn't support for this from what I've seen. I have seen a few boosters tweet about it. They want their box bigger, but not from most of the big boosters that I've chatted with. Definitely not from the season ticket holders that I've known for years and years, and for sure not on social media. What are your thoughts? Let's chat about it down in the comments. Thank you for listening to my rant. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this and I wanted to weigh in and give my opinion. I'll be in a better mood for our next video, I promise. But as always, go Gators.